Hi everyone. We will start shortly. We're still waiting for another two speakers to be in to join us. Okay. I think we just start. We start first. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning, everyone. First, I would like to wish everyone happy National Statistics Day and happy World Statistics Day. I welcome all of you to our second parallel session on the topic of financial and economic statistics. So for this section, actually, we have three presenters. So actually, we're still waiting for Mr. Zainizam to join us, but I believe second presenter, Miss Wan Rahifah, and the third presenter, Muhammad Shafiq, is already in. Can you identify yourself, please?
Hi, Madam Moderator.
Hi, Wan.
Hi.
Welcome to the panel session. Is Shafiq around?
Assalamualaikum. Hi, Madam Noraliza.
Waalaikumsalam. Waalaikumsalam, Shafiq. Thank you. Okay, since Mr. Zainizam still unable to join us at this moment, we are trying to get him in. Then we will need to rearrange in terms of the flow of a presenter. So so the new arrangement, the second presenter, Wan Rahifah, will become the first presenter, and followed by Muhammad Shafiq as the second one. And hopefully, Mr. Zainizam will able to join us. Then he will become the third presenter. Okay. So, all right. Then before we start, let me introduce we have three papers actually for today's session. The first one is if Yuan sneeze, will Ringgit Malaysia be affected? This paper will be presented by Miss Wan Rahifah. She is a senior statistician at Department of Statistics Malaysia. She was awarded degree in applied statistics in 2006 from the University of Technology Mara. She currently works as a statistician in the services statistics division, focusing on collection and dissemination on services statistics. Meanwhile, our third presenter is Mr. Muhammad Shafiq Haroon. So his paper entitled Malaysia's Response and Action to the Labour Market Situation from the Impact of Economic Crisis. Then some introduction about Muhammad Shafiq. He is a statistician at the Department of Statistics Malaysia. Served for 2 years. He's been assigned to the Malaysian Bureau of Labour Statistics under the Department of Statistics Malaysia, and involved with a lot of various national and international agencies in producing and monitoring labour market information in Malaysia. Prior his career as a statistician, he was undergraduate study in statistics at UiTM in 2011, and following his completion, he enrolled in the Bachelor of Honours. He enrolled in the Master of Science in Mathematical Science at Universiti Malaysia, Terengganu. His current research interest in labour market is on the characteristics of young persons not in employment, education, or training. So some housekeeping announcement. So each presenter, you will be allocated for 15 minutes for presentation, and we will only after we complete the three presentations, we will have the Q&A at the end of the session. And for those participants who would like to ask any question, you may use the chat box, and also you also can click on the raise hand icon so that we can know you. You may introduce yourself and also raise any questions about the paper. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Ms. Wan Rahifah for her paper entitled If Yuan Sneeze, will Ringgit Malaysia be affected? The floor is yours, Rahifah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. Thank you to Madam Moderator. Oh, sorry, I can't turn on my camera. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
All right. Thank you to Madam Moderator. I am Rahifah Ramli from Department of Statistics Malaysia, and now it's my turn to present our study entitled If Yuan Sneeze, Will Malaysian Ringgit Be Affected? For your information, this study was conducted in collaboration with Zainuddin Ahmad and Siti Nurfadilah Ahmad Saad. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is an open economy. According to World Bank 2020, Malaysia total trade contributed 86.9% to Malaysia GDP in 1917, and it jumped to 123.1% in 2019. In doing international business, one of important consideration is the stability of a currency exchange rate. An appreciation in exchange rate will result in export become expensive and vice versa. A higher exchange rate can also worsen a country's balance of trade. In other angle, consumer monitor exchange rate because it can affect consumption price, which later will influence purchasing power. Companies can be lose millions of dollars due to volatility of exchange rates. Central bank observe exchange rate because it is one of factor determining OPR, which will give pressure to interest rate in Malaysia. The movement of Malaysia ringgit will give impact to many parties such as producers of goods and services, consumer and central bank. There are many factors that can influence exchange rate. One of it is world major currency. The objective of this study is to investigate relationship between Malaysia ringgit with other major currency. There is Euro, British Pound, Chinese Yuan, Japanese Yen, and USD as a denominator. We also want to explore if there is a shock to the major currencies, what will happen to Malaysia ringgit. Further, we also would like to investigate the future composition of Malaysia ringgit against the studied variable. The United States is the world's largest economy, and thus the movement in USD may have huge effect on the other world currency. However, the Chinese currency is expected to grow and give impact to ASEAN currency. These are the other studies on currency and exchange rate that was used as reference during this study. Ladies and gentlemen, in this study, we use the quarterly time series data that covers the period from Q1 2015 until Q4 2019. Augmented decaffular unit root test used to analyze stationarity. The result showed that the variable stationary at level and first different. Then optimal lag was chosen using a Kaike information criterion. The general model for ARDL is as shown in the slide. Next, we take a look at empirical result. Pearson correlation analysis is used to measure linear correlation between two variables. From the analysis indicate that the fairly strong positive relationship between Euro with R0.83, Japanese Yen and Malaysia Ringgit shows a moderate positive relationship with R0.66. However, Yuan and Euro showed nearly no association with R negative 0.04. Since the studied variable are stationary at level and first different, ARDL, autoregressive distributed lag, was applied. ARDL bound test showed that there exists a long run between dependent variable. There is Malaysia Ringgit with 4 studied variable with F statistic less than 5%. Regression coefficient then were generated. However, the coefficient of ECM was not significant with p-value greater than 5%. Thus, this study proceed with short-term relationship. Result in short-term relationship showed that Malaysia Ringgit lag 1 was significant with p-value less than 5% coefficient 0.69. This indicates that 1 unit increase in Malaysia ringgit like 1 in a given quarter will tend to influence Malaysia ringgit in the following quarter by 0.69 unit. Meanwhile, 1 unit in increased Chinese yuan in a given quarter will tend to influence Malaysia ringgit in the following quarter by 0.33 unit. However, 1 unit increase in Chinese yuan like 1 in a given quarter will tend to influence Malaysia ringgit negatively in the following quarter by decrease 0.3 unit. Next, ladies and gentlemen, now I will proceed to the impulse response function. In this study, a 10-year period was selected. A first graph showed the response of Malaysia ringgit to Malaysia ringgit itself. A shock to Malaysia ringgit has observable impact on the variable itself. Malaysia ringgit will gradually increase in short term until period 2. However, it starts to fall until the long run, but will not enter to negative region. For the second graph, showed the response of Malaysia ringgit to euro. A shock to euro has positive impact on Malaysia ringgit. Malaysia ringgit has an upward trend, reaches its peaks in period 3 and maintain its momentum in long run and does not enter negative territory. The third response of Malaysia ringgit to GBP. A shock in GBP will result in Malaysia ringgit react negatively in downward trend. However, in period 5, it start to enter positive territory and maintain upward trend in long run. Next graph is a response of Malaysia ringgit to Japanese yen. The shock to Japanese yen will affect in Malaysia ringgit react positively in upward trend. Malaysia ringgit reaches the highest point in period 4 and maintain in positive territory. Next, response for Malaysia ringgit to Chinese yuan. A shock to Chinese yuan has a visible negative impact on Malaysia ringgit. Malaysia ringgit would start to fall in period 2 and continue to be a negative territory with wider gap. Next is a variant decomposition analysis. In this study, a 10 period was selected. In short run, period 1, 100% of focus error variance in Malaysia ringgit is explained by Malaysia ringgit itself. The contribution of Malaysia ringgit is strongly endogenous. In long run, year 10, the influence of Malaysia ringgit on itself decreased significantly to 43.9%. Euro contribute 0% of focus or error variance in short run, and in the long run, its contribution increased marginally to 6.8%. It is not a good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. In short run, Chinese yuan contributes 0% of focus error variance, and in the long run, its contribution up marginally to 4.4%. It also not a good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. Japanese yen contribute 0% of focus error variance in short run. However, in the long run, its contribution will increase significantly to 35.0%. It is a good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. Japanese yen shows strongly exogenous influence. This implies real Japanese yen will influence Malaysia ringgit in the future. However, in short run, GBP contribute 0% for focus error variance, and in the long run, its contribution will increase marginally to 9.7%. Therefore, the currency is not good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. Next, for diagnostic test, based on the test, it showed that the ARDL model, which is Malaysia ringgit, was dependent variable and had significant R squared 97.1% and F statistic with p-value less than 1%. Bush-Godfrey serial correlation LM test showed there was no serial correlation with p-value greater than 5%, and the model passed Husum stability test. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's come to end of my presentation. There is discussion and conclusion. Back to my study. If Yuan sneeze, will Malaysia ringgit be affected? Based on my study, at least there are two analyses that showed Chinese yuan has significant influence on Malaysia ringgit. First, result on ARDL showed that Chinese yuan and its leg 1 is significant affecting Malaysia ringgit. Other result also showed that leg 1 of Malaysia ringgit, Japanese yen, British pound and its legs 1 were also statistically significant in affecting Malaysia ringgit. In other study done by Beh Wan Lin, they found that 1% decrease in Malaysia ringgit will lead to a 3.5% increase of trade balance in Malaysia. Meanwhile, a 1% increase in the consumer price index of China will cause a 2.4% increase in the trade balance. Second, based on impulse response function analysis, it showed that Chinese yen has significant effect on Malaysia ringgit. For Chinese yuan, if there is a shock to this currency, Malaysia ringgit will react negatively from period 2 until long period. The result showed that Malaysia ringgit has positive reaction if there is a shock to Malaysia ringgit itself. Malaysia ringgit will also react positively if there is a shock to euro and Japanese yen. On other hand, Malaysia ringgit will fall initially if there is a shock in GDP, but will start to enter territory in period 5. However, based on the variance decomposition analysis, it showed that Japanese yen is good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. This implies that Japanese yen will influence Malaysia ringgit in the future, whilst euro, Chinese yen and GBP are not good predictor to Malaysia ringgit. In this study, there is only major currency that were used as the independent variable. For further research, other variables that can be included as dependent variable are price of petroleum, gold price, and interest rate. Thank you. That's all my presentation.
Thank you, Yuan, for a very good presentation on the impact of a currency exchange from the selected country to our Malaysian ringgit. Okay, so now we move to the second presenter, Mr. Muhammad Shafiq Haroon. He will present on the Malaysia's response and action to the labour market situation from the impact of economic crisis. Shafiq, the floor is yours. One, can you stop share your slide so that we can allow Shafiq to share his slide? Thank you. Okay, Shafiq, you may start now. Thank you. Shafiq, we don't hear you.
Can you share the link for the sharing screen?
It's on the top right corner next to the leave button. You should see a box with an arrow upwards. Click on it. But you need to have your slides open on a separate window. And then you should be able to see like the window that you want to share.
We get someone to assist you, Shafiq.
Okay, all right. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. Thank you, Madam Noraliza. So, my name Muhammad Shafiq Harun from Malaysia Bureau of Labour Statistics, Department of Statistics Malaysia. So, I am here today to present about the Malaysia response and action to the labour market situation from the impact of economic crisis. So, this is my presentation outline, starting with introduction, followed by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic to the labour market, and ending with the conclusion. So basically, Malaysia has experienced three stages of the economic crisis, namely commodity shock in 1985, Asian financial crisis 1997, and global financial crisis in 2008. During these three economic crises, there is the economic downturn in Malaysia, including the declining in export price index, depreciation of ringgit against the dollar, and share price fell sharply in aftermath of the crisis. Hence, these three crises has triggered the labor market situation, showing the sudden increase in unemployment rate from the normal. So in early 2020, the world economy has undergone the drastic change because of the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, and Malaysia has no exception. Currently, Malaysia is entering the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. As of the 19th October 2020, there are 21,363 COVID-19 cases reported by the Ministry of Health. This unprecedented event happened, forcing the Malaysian government to implement the Movement Control Order or MCO. The implementation subsequently causing the business operation to become halt. Thus, the continuous stopping of business operation affected the businesses' income generation, and consequently, employers decide to cut their employer salary, and some of employers need to terminate their staff. So next, I will explain about the impact of the pandemic to the labor market in Malaysia. So due to the spread of COVID-19 followed by the extension of MCO during the second quarter of 2020, based on the labor force report by DOSM, the unemployment rate went up by 1.8 percentage point to 5.1%. According to the Social Security Organization, SOCSO, the cumulative number of job losses from January 2020 to June 2020, around 50,000 job losses has been reported. When we compare with AFC and GFC, the unemployment rate increased 2.6% in 1996 to 3.9% in 1998, and increased from 3.3% in 2008 to 3.7% in 2009. However, as the indicator in June observed recovery in monthly basis, the labor market has also portrayed sign of the recovery. So now we look on the unemployment rate and GDP. So Malaysia GDP contracted 17.1% from a marginal growth of 0.7% in the first quarter of 2020. The performance for this quarter was the lowest recorded since the fourth quarter of 1998. In this quarter, labor utilization was yet to reach the optimum level as business operation began to resume gradually following the implementation of MCO. The slower performance of production due to the lower labor demand have impacted the labor market. In fact, during the quarter, the employed person reduced by 1.3% to 14.88 million person. In this situation, the smaller reduction in employed person has again a significant decline of GDP. It's seen as a positive impact of the implementation of initiative by the Malaysian government, such as wage subsidy program, in the effort to ensure employee retention. So that for the unemployment and CPI, during quarter 2, 2020, the CPI declined 2.6% to 118.2 as again 128.5 in the same quarter of the preceding year. Certainly, when unemployment is low, more consumers have income to purchase goods. Demand for goods rise, and when demand rise, price follow. During period of high employment, Customer purchase few goods, which put downward pressure on the price and reduce the inflation. So now, how GDP and CPI related to unemployment? So for your information, this study analyzed the relation or relationship or the correlation of GDP and CPI related to unemployment. When it comes to study the economy, growth economy and unemployment are two primary factors we must consider. There is a clear relationship between these two factors, and many researchers have framed the discussion by trying to study the relationship between economic growth and unemployment level. Okay, based on the scatter plot, the relationship between unemployment with GDP and CPI have been an inversely correlation, supported by Pearson correlation analysis. The printout indicate that the strength of association between the GDP and unemployment is strong correlation, and that the correlation coefficient is very highly significant. As we can see that 75% of the variation in GDP is explained by unemployment. Meanwhile, the strength of association between CPI and unemployment is weak relationship. Thus, we can say that only 34% of the variation on CPI is explained by unemployment. So now we proceed to the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So Malaysia government has implemented several phases of movement control order MCO starting from 18 March till end of this year, as shown in the slide. Okay, during this period, several stimulus package was announced, including the Prihatin Economic Stimulus Package, Prihatin Plus, Plan Jana Semula Ekonomi Negara, and Kita Prihatin. The endorsement of this stimulus package aimed to cushion Malaysian from the economic fallout brought by COVID-19 pandemic. So as the conclusion, for the three economic crises stated before this, there are many lessons that can be learned in order to overcome the current crisis caused by the COVID-19. Besides, several government policy response also have equal significant effect on the economy. The implementation of MCO and the permission for businesses to operate during the recovery phase show the government effort in order to control the COVID-19 outbreak in Malaysia. As the recovery stage take off and business operation and movement restart, the labor market situation would also grow and improve. Nonetheless, while labor market indicator may see recovery in the next quarter, internal demand will be the determinant factor in driving the economy. This subsequently government initiative, together with other agency response, has significantly gave positive impact to the recovery of labor market and Malaysia economy. So with that, conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Happy National Statistics Day. Thank you.
Happy National Statistics Day also, Shafiq. Thank you, Shafiq, for the presentation. A topic which is, I think, very close to our heart with the current pandemic situation. So I believe Mr. Zainizam is already joined us. Mr. Zainizam, can you identify yourself? Mr. Zainizam? Mr. Zainizam?
Hello.
Hi. Assalamualaikum, Mr. Zainizam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
All right. So, okay. So we just want to make sure that you're already in. So, before you start, I think I will introduce yourself first before you start your presentation. So for all the participants in this session, Mr. Zainizam is a senior lecturer in the Department of Economics, Faculty of Management of Economics University, Pendidikan Sultan Idris. So his area of specialization is economics of education, that is the study of economic issues relating to the education, including the demand for education, the financing and provision of education, and the comparative efficiency of various educational programs and policies. His current research interest includes educational skill mismatch, which is something that we really want to drill down about this topic, returns to higher education and economic growth. So his paper today entitled How Much Earnings Lost for Being Ended in Overqualified Jobs, Evidence from Salary and Wages Survey 2010 to 2016. Without further ado, Mr. Zainizam, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. And very good morning to all of you. Okay, actually, for this morning, I would like to present the topic. It's a little bit different from what has been mentioned by the Chairperson. The topic we are going to present today is about earnings penalty of our education, some sort like that. Evidence from the Salaries and Wages Survey 2010-2016. This paper has been written together with Dr. Nurkasum binti Muhammad Isa. She's from Faculty of Science Humanities, Universiti Pendidikan Sultan Idris. Okay, here are the some outline that we are going through for this presentation. In terms of introduction, methodology, findings, discussion, and conclusion, and there was some Q&A session. So in terms of when we're talking about the overqualification, we are talking about the mismatch between education or required, what individual actual education and what the job required for them. So in general, overqualification can be defined as a worker's actual qualification exceeds what is required for the job. So the opposite is about underqualification, refer to a worker's actual qualification below than what the job requires. Otherwise, this overqualification or undereducation actually some term refer to educational and skill mismatch. So some study they use over education or over under education. Some study they use over skill and under skill. So due to economic uncertainty, result in the level of qualification required in a job doesn't always match workers' level of qualification. Hence, some of them end up in overqualified or underqualified in their jobs. So what happened right now, for example, during the COVID-19, I think has been presented by the previous presenters. So he mentioned about unemployment rate in Malaysia is getting increased. So during the COVID-19, so this one of the example, one of the causes that might lead to increasing the number of overqualification or over education. So assessment of the consequence of overqualification may seem decisive for policymakers because apart from individual, they spend a lot of money in education in order to get higher return. But if economic uncertainty, they might end up in overqualification job. There are some studies find that overqualification tend to decrease individual productivity. It's not about individual, but at the same time, they also could reduce firm performance, and up to a certain point, they could reduce the productivity of a country. So this paper aims to explore the incident and the earnings outcomes of overqualification for state in Malaysia between 2010 and 2016. This is because for this study, we are fortunate because we have a data set that provided by the Department of Statistics. So the data we use here is about the Salaries and Wages Survey from 2010 and 2010, 2016. So we have three different data sets, 2010, 2013, and 2016. So the advantage of the data set actually has a lot of information related to employed person in the educational background, occupation, and the most important part, they have salaries and wages. Because if we compare to level 4 survey, we don't have salary and wages, but for SWS, we do have. So this this kind of data sets allow us to study, to explore the outcome of overqualification in the Malaysian labour market. So in the data set, they have occupation, which was classified using 2 digits of the Malaysia Standard Classification of Occupation, and then for this paper, we employ around almost 42,000 workers in 2010, 2013, 2016 involved for the study. This refers to employed person. So, in order to measure of overqualification, the data set permit us to use 2 different methods. Actually, the first one, we can use job analysis method, or what we call JA, and the second one, we can use mood approach. So for the job, JA provides a clear measure of qualification level required to carry out tasks and duties of a given occupation. So meaning that for the JA is a occupational code. For this one, the data set in SWS allow us to utilize the MASCO, Malaysia Standard Classification of Occupation. This is what the JA is some sort of MASCO. So the JA permits us to utilize the 2013 Malaysia Standard Classification of Occupation, where the MASCO already classified required education for a given occupation. We can see later this one. Based on the MASCO 2013, this one. So for MASCO 2013 already defined what is the required education, or required qualification, or required skill. So compared to the occupation, you can see from this figure, this table, the orange refer to overqualified, means that workers actual qualification, they have higher qualification related to what the job required for them, what the job fits are determined by the MASCO. So if they have qualification similar to determine by the MASCO, they are deemed as well-matched worker. Otherwise, if the actual qualification MASCO, they are classified as underqualified workers. So the second method, we use the mood approach. In the data set, actually, the data set allow us, the data set has occupation, 2-digit occupation, meaning that in the data set we have around 49 different occupation. So this allow us to calculate the mood qualification level for each occupation, and this we equate to required education. Based on the mood value, we can say that if an individual actual level of qualification exceeds or below than the mood level of required qualification for a given occupation, she or he is classified as an overqualified or underqualified workers. If the level of qualification attained is the same as the mode, individuals are classified as the well-matched. So for the methodology, we concern about 2 things. The first one is about how we measure overqualification, and the second thing, we also concern about the earnings outcomes. So for this paper, we use standard means earning regression to estimate the earnings outcome of overqualification. How much the earning penalties? So that would be among the overall qualified workers. For this one, we use standard means earning equation, and for this paper, I don't have to elaborate more detail. This is a very standard earning regression. And then for this, we use ordinary least square to estimate So the means earning regression, we run separately for 3 different subsample. The first one, pool sample, sample by sex and by state, to study whether of the return to different group are significant or not. So based on the incident of our education, which we focus on the mood and the GA, so table 1 demonstrate the incident of our education in general. We can see that is on this one. We can see the first one, the mood value, the second one, the JA, job analyst. So in terms of, in Malaysia, actually our education only represent about 14 and 15% of the total employed person available in the data set. Whereas the under education, not under, this one is not under educated, this instead overqualified and underqualified. I'm sorry for that. So underqualified represent almost between 21 and 33% of the total employed person. But the majority of respondents, so they work in a well-matched job, which the actual qualification required for the job. Majority, the highest number belongs to the JA method. Okay, this one, the incident of overqualification by gender, so across mode and JA method, we can see the incident of overqualification. Actually, there would be no gender difference with respect to the incident of overqualification. We can see female. If you focus on the mood value, we can see female have higher incident of underqualified. They are 3 percentage point higher compared to the male. But if we focus on the JA method, we can see both male and female have similar share of overqualification, 15% roughly. But female actually, they have higher incident of well-matched compared to male. So in either method, either we use mode or we use statistical, we use GA method. For men, they were overrepresented in underqualified jobs, 36% and 23% compared to 27% and 17%. Okay, in terms of states, we find that the incident of overqualification, this one we focus only on overqualification. So the incident of overqualification actually is higher in Klang Valley, especially in Putrajaya, Kuala Lumpur, and in Selangor, for example. They have higher incident of overqualification. The smallest percentage would be in Perak and Johor and Negeri Sembilan. Okay, we will discuss later about what would be why this should be the case. In terms of earnings outcome, so here the table 2 summarize the earnings outcome of overqualification. So we have 3 different groups, as I mentioned before: general, sex, and state. So all are significant. You can see this one is very significant. This state is more than 2. So apart from this one for the mode, this one for the JA method, so mostly significant at 1% level. So this suggests that overqualification result in earnings reduction among employed person. So for convenience, we convert this table into chart for easy understanding. So for earnings outcome, we can see the earning penalty for overqualification is higher. So for the mood value, minus 23%, means that overqualified workers earn 23% less than the well-matched counterparts. For the mood value is about 21%. They earn about 1/5 So earning reduction is about 1/5 of the total income. This one in terms of gender, for gender we find that even there has no gender difference with respect to overqualification, but in terms of earnings outcome, we find that women, they are more penalized compared to their men counterparts. For example, overqualified women, they earn about between 21, 22 and 29%, between 29 to 30% reduction in earning compared to overqualified men. The earning will reduce between 15 and 18%. And then this is by state. We find that although Putrajaya has high incidence of overqualification, in terms of earnings, they are among the lowest. We can see this one. If we focus only for the mood method, we can find only the earnings penalty is about only 13%, similar to Kuala Lumpur, 12%. The highest was in Kelantan, 40%. About 40%. If they end up in overqualified job, the income will reduce by 40% compared to the well-matched workers. This is a very huge number. And for the discussion, this one, the salaries and wages survey allowed to the exploration of the incident and the earnings consequences of overqualification in the Malaysian labour market. We use the both method, so show that over-education and overqualification and underqualification coexist in the labour market. So the incident was higher in the Kelang Valley. This perhaps the Kelang Valley provide compensated for by a greater number of job seekers, and individuals have to compete to get a better well-matched job, because in the Kelang Valley they have more workers, more employed person compared to other regions, and then they attract more workers to come to Kelang Valley to get. So means that they have to compete to get a better matched job. Some of them will end up in overqualified job. So in terms of women, this one, we can see that finding such an incident of overqualification, either we use job method or we use mode method, both has a true consequence on the impacts of individual earning. The earnings would be between 40 to 40%. It's very huge. Okay, the penalty was higher for women. We can see this one, the penalty was higher. This might be, might reflect that women might constrained by the mobility constraint, especially for the married person. So if they have this mobility constraint, they have to find job within the smaller area. So this is in line with previous study, some previous study actually in line with the theory of overqualification provided by Friend to 1976. But we have to acknowledge that finding from this study, especially with respect to the earnings outcome, should be taken with caution, as we do not control for some econometric issues in the earning regression, because we do not control for endogeneity, we do not control for sample selection bias. This might result in upwardly biased estimation. So we have to concern about this one. But since both methods have a true consequence, if we convert this penalty were translated into real term, the loss for being an overqualified workers would range between 450 until 590 per month. Meaning that overqualified worker would lose earnings approximately 500 per month. This is a huge number, because if we convert into a macro level, this could be 1 billion. If we compare between 15% of the total employed person available in the labor market, it will end up this means that could be between 2 to 3 million of workers are being employed in overqualified jobs. So this could cost the country is about almost 1 or 2 billion, or 0.2% of the total GDP. So there is some question about the data set, because the data set doesn't allow us to explore whether the overqualification is a persistent or long-term phenomena for individual, because the data set doesn't permit us to do that. But if the overqualification is a persistent phenomena in the among individuals, it should be concerned enough by policymakers. So in order to make the data set more meaningful, so improving the data set should be wanted, especially by we should include a variety of measurement of educational and skill mismatch, either in the SWS or in the level 4 survey, in order for us to better understanding about the incident and the outcomes of educational skill mismatch. Moreover, the SWS could be turned into panel data survey, because if we have the panel data survey, it allows us to study the overqualification over time on the same person. So this allows us to see whether overqualification is a persistent or short-term phenomena for individual. So that's for our presentation. Open for Q&A. Before we finish, I would like to show you some finding that's not included in the full paper. This one in terms of cohort. Okay, based on cohort, we find that the incidence of overskilling actually very low among the new entrant in the labor market, but they are more likely among people in this range of age. Okay, 25 to 29%. Meaning those just graduated from university, for example, and it getting decreased. Okay, I will use so. Okay.
For another one.
Another. Okay. Okay, this is this just we convert, we transform the earning outcome in terms of monthly earning. What would be the loss if they end up in overqualified job? This one in general. Okay, 300. This one by state. We can see this one. Okay, that's for the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Zainizam. A very great presentation in terms of the overqualification. So, which is something, one of the major issues also being discussed nowadays with the current pandemic situation, with softer labor demand, whereby at international, they also classify this as underemployed. So, those who overqualification, they're working at the below level. Okay, so now we have come to the Q&A session. So we have received a lot of questions from the participants. Thank you very much. So 3 questions is actually for Madam Wan Rahifah. The first one from Ahmad. Can you explain detail? We will go by presenter. It will be easier rather than we change the presenter. So 4 questions for Wan Rahifah from Ahmad. Explain detail between variance, decomposition analysis, and vector autoregressive analysis in your study. One, you already have the question, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so I just read aloud for other participants to do also. Second one from Siti Noraliza. Is it possible to include trade values into the experiment to make the estimation more robust? Additionally, when you mention shock, does it matter if it is positive or negative shocks? And the third one from Sua Jin Yang, she's got 2 questions for you. related to the city's question just now, could there be OVB involved here or common shocks that are not controlled for that's driving the Malaysian ringgit response to RMB and Japanese yen? Might there also be common movements in other asset classes driving the euro responses? And the second question is there a reason why 2015 to 2019 was selected? Might there be any idiosyncrasies to note for earlier time periods? One, for you to answer the question.
Okay, thank you, madam. For the first question, what difference between variant decomposition and vector autoregressive, right? For vector autoregressive and variant decomposition come together.
Sorry, I need to disturb you. I just want Mr. Zainizam, maybe you can just stop sharing the slide so that one can continue with Q&A session. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, is it okay?
Yes, you may proceed.
Okay, sorry, I can turn on my camera, just hear my voice. Okay, vector autoregressive regression and variant decomposition comes together. Simply state, for every changes of x means in our study, the major currency that yuan, yen, euro, and pound. There is corresponding changes in Y, that means Malaysia ringgit. The focus of variant decomposition is on the response of variables for Malaysia ringgit. Variant decomposition helps in interpretation of one model once it have been fitted. For the second question, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative shock. What we concern is more on impulse response function that measuring the reaction of dependent variable. So it can be negative or positive. Oh, before that, the trade value, yes, for trade value, you can include it in the future, means for the future research. You can include other variable you want to include, like price of oil and trade value also. For the third question, one can give me of sorry. A third question from Mrs. Swa. We will study further and respond to you through email. And then number two, is it there a reason why 2015 and 19 was selected? This paper was prepared early so that
One.
yes, wait for a while, madam, for the third question, the second question.
Did you get the question one?
The paper for the second question from Mrs. Swa, this paper was prepared only so that we only study the data for that time only. Thank you. For any question you can email me. I will give my email meeting chat. Thank you.
Maybe we can add one more question for you. This gonna be the final one from Afiq.
Okay.
So, question, your study is using quarterly data, first quarter 15 to fourth quarter of 20. Have you tried to use a higher frequency data monthly or daily instead? If yes, is there any significant long-term relationship? That will be a kind of question for you, Yuan.
Okay. For this moment, we don't use monthly or daily data. That's all. Thank you.
Yuan.
All right.
Thank you so much. We hope that the participant satisfied with the answer. Maybe for Swaji Lian, they will provide the answer later. Okay, so there's another one question from Farha Bank Negara to our second presenter, Muhammad Shafiq. His question, you did mention that the unemployment is improving after business resumed. What is the latest statistics on unemployment? Is the improvement was coming from formal employment or informal employment? Shafiq?
Okay, thank you, Madam Noraliza. So thank you to Nur Farha for the question. So recently, DOSM has released the monthly labor force report on 13 October 2020. So in the report, the total number of unemployed person in August 2020 is 741.6 thousand, where the unemployment rate is 4.7%, remain as in July 2020. So during the Recovery Movement Control Order, RMCO implementation on June 2020, most of the economic sector were eligible to reoperate. The lifting up of the restriction lead almost all sectors to regain momentum. So unemployment rate, so basically we can see the unemployment rate released by DOSM show slightly decrease from 5.3% in May to 4.9% in June 2020. So this improvement will contribute both by both formal and informal activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafiq. There's another question from Fiza. He want to know your view on the Shafiq.
Yeah.
Okay. Question from Fiza on your views of MEF estimated unemployment, since they estimated the unemployment could reach up to 2 million or 13% this year. What is your views on this?
Okay, based on my view for the unemployment reach 13%. Basically, when we go through the unemployment rate, Malaysia unemployment rate. So basically, the unemployment rate in Malaysia, the highest unemployment rate is on 1986, which is 7.4%. So we don't reach 2-digit unemployment rate since 1986. I think the estimation for the 30%, we can say we justify based on the other government initiative implemented for the to overcome the outbreak of COVID-19. So not possible the unemployment rate can reach up to 2-digit, or the unemployed person can reach to 2 million person in this year.
Okay, maybe I could add further. So if we see the trend of unemployment rate in Malaysia for this year, the highest rate was in May, in April or May, Shafiq?
May.
Yes,
May.
in May, 5.3%.
Yep.
So that was the highest rate at this moment of unemployment. And we know during that time, we're still under the MCO. So with current economic situation whereby more economic sector is open, then it will allow more economic activities. And this positive, the opening of businesses will give a positive impact to the labor market, whereby it will encourage more people to enter the labor market, and then to work during at this time. So for us, in terms of whether that we can reach to the 13% or 2 million, so what we can give right now at this moment, the highest was 5.3% during the MCO in May, and slowly it shows a very it is from the 5.3 with the latest one at the 4.7%. given that the pandemic situation is under control, it will be better for the next following month. So, but we hope the pandemic situation will be under control with the third wave of situation. So, thank you, Shafiq, with the answer. We have last question is actually for our third presenter from Sua Jinglian to Mr. Zainizam. There are two questions. The first is self-selection at play here. I see that the overqualification shows up for managers, technician associates and professional classes, but only for jobs requiring STPM or below. Might workers be systematically crowded out for jobs that they are matched for, hence registering lower wages? And her second question, following to that, might there be sectoral differences driving this? Perhaps the field of qualification matters as well, which affects their reservation wages. Mr. Zainizam, the two questions for you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, thank you, Madam Noraliza. So I would like to respond the first question. Actually, the first question is about could there be self-selection? Yes, I think so. I think so because for this purpose in the data set, when we try to regress, so we already drop the manager from the survey. So since the survey we focus on job from professional up to elementary, we remove the manager occupation because we think that for manager there could be the required qualification could be come from the working experience instead of educational or qualification, because in order to become a manager you have to concern about the skill. The skill can be get through work experience or can be obtained through formal education. So that's why for the first part, it could be sample selection bias, but so we have to acknowledge that we do not have any variable in the data set in order to be served as good instrument for selection estimation. That's why we have to acknowledge the result the estimation could be upwardly biased because we do not control for sample selection due to lack of variable to be served as instrument. So for at the same time, if we use this part, for example, for the job analysis JA or mood method, it's something related to the nature of the method gathered, because MASCO, for example, takes time to release, to publish. So it takes time to compile all information. So by the time it released, the required qualification could be outdated. That's why we have to concern about this one. We have to analyze. This is one of the disadvantages if we use GA method. And then for the second part, so I forgot to mention in the regression we also control for industry. So because the second question related to industry, we also control for industry. So there were more than, if I'm not mistaken, more than 20 industry available in the data set. So we also control for industry, and we still find the earning penalty still exists. So even though we control for result controlling for industry, the earning penalty is higher. Once we control for the industry dummy, so the earning penalty could be reduced up to a certain point. So, and then in terms of qualification stamp, so actually for the data set, I think we have we are not concerned about the type of qualification or field of education, because in the data set they have information about the field of study among employed person, but that one available from 2013 and 2016. We do not take this one into account when we do a regression. That's for my response. So it could be the result could be the any penalty could be lower if we control for qualification, type of qualification we could focus on field of education, for example, field of studies. The result could be different once we control for that. Okay, that's for my argument.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zainizam, for that for the answer. I believe we have a lot more questions actually from the participant, but so we are running out of time because we need to proceed with the opening ceremony. For with this, I would like to thank to the speakers with very good presentation, and also and then for the participants for the overwhelming questions. So we hope that all of us will have a very good day today with the National Statistics Day. So inshallah, we will meet again in another session. Thank you so much, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.
Bye.